I woke up in the intensive care unit at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago with tubes in my chest and pain that felt like a freight train had run over my heart. The triple bypass surgery had lasted 6 hours, and I was alive by miracle. At age 50, my 25 years working as a regional sales supervisor for a large pharmaceutical company had finally taken their toll. Stress, smoking, and sleepless nights closing deals had nearly killed me. "Mr. Davidson, how are you feeling?" asked the nurse, checking the monitors at my side. "Like I got in a fight with a bear and lost," I replied hoarsely. "My wife, Linda, is she here?" The nurse exchanged a strange look with the doctor who had just entered. "Mr. Davidson, your wife was here during the surgery, but she left a few hours ago. She said she would be back tomorrow." Something in her tone bothered me, but I was too drugged to process it fully. Linda had left me alone on my first night after heart surgery? That didn't seem like her. Or at least, it didn't seem like the woman I thought I'd been married to for 18 years. On the second day, when I finally managed to stay awake for more than 2 hours straight, Linda showed up. She looked different. Her hair was freshly cut, her makeup was flawless, and she was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. For someone visiting her husband in the ICU, she looked radiant. "Hi, Robert. How are you feeling?" she asked, keeping a respectful distance from my bed, as if I were contagious. "Better, considering I almost died. Where were you last night? I thought you'd be here with me." Linda looked down at her hands, avoiding my gaze. "Robert, I need to talk to you about something important. But maybe I should wait until you've recovered a little more." "Linda, I almost died. If there's something you need to tell me, say it now." She took a deep breath and pulled up a chair, but still kept her distance. "Robert, I can't go on with this marriage anymore. I filed for divorce yesterday." The heart monitor started beeping faster. For a moment, I thought I was having another heart attack. "You did what?" I managed to stammer. "You were on the operating table, and I had time to think about our life together. We haven't been happy for years, Robert. You live for your work. I live alone at home. It doesn't make sense to continue like this." "Linda, you filed for divorce while I was literally fighting for my life?" "The doctors said the surgery was a success. You're going to be fine." Her voice was cold, calculated, as if she had rehearsed this conversation. "I thought it was best to be honest with you from the beginning of your recovery." I looked at my wife of 18 years, the woman I met when I was a young salesman trying to take on the world, who was by my side when I built my career, when we bought our house in Lincoln Park, when we went through all the trials and tribulations of adult life. And now she was abandoning me in my most vulnerable moment. "Is there someone else?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer from the guilty look in her eyes. "Robert, this isn't about someone else. It's about us. About how we've become different people. Is that a yes or a no, Linda?" She stood up, adjusting her purse on her shoulder. "I'll let you rest. My lawyer will contact you when you're discharged." "Linda, wait." But she was already leaving, her heels echoing down the ICU hallway like a countdown to the end of my life as I knew it. I was left alone with the sound of the monitors and a devastating realization. The woman I loved had chosen the moment when I was at my weakest to strike me. But Linda had made a crucial mistake. She didn't know that 3 days before the surgery, when the doctors warned me about the risks of the procedure, I had taken some legal precautions she would never have imagined. As the nurses bustled around the ICU and Chicago continued its frenetic life outside, I began to smile for the first time since I had woken up. Linda thought she had chosen the perfect moment to leave me. She had no idea that she had chosen the perfect moment to discover who she really was. More importantly, she had no idea what I had prepared for this exact situation. 5 days after the bomb Linda had dropped in the ICU, I was discharged from the hospital with a mile-long list of medications and a recommendation to avoid stress. The irony was that my own wife had become my biggest source of stress when I should have been focusing solely on my recovery. Back at our home in Lincoln Park, an $800,000 property we bought 10 years ago during one of my best years in sales, I found obvious signs that Linda had been preparing for a new life without me for longer than she had admitted in the hospital. Her closet was half empty. Several pieces of jewelry were missing, including the pearl necklace I had given her on our 15th anniversary. But what struck me most was what she had left behind. All the family photos, all the sentimental gifts I had given her over the years, as if our history together was trash she didn't care to take with her. I sat down heavily in the living room chair, still feeling pain in my chest, and began to piece together the puzzle. Linda hadn't made this last-minute decision in the hospital waiting room. This was planned. I grabbed my laptop and started checking our bank statements online. What I found made me sicker than any heart problem. Over the past 6 months, Linda had been making regular transfers of $500 to an account I didn't recognize. Always on Thursdays. Always at the same time. Thursday is her painting class, I muttered to myself. But $500 per class? Or $500 for something else entirely? I decided to give my brother Marcus, who worked as an insurance investigator, a call. Robert, how are you, man? I heard about the surgery. Physically, I'm getting better. Emotionally. Marcus, I need a favor. Linda has filed for divorce, and I think there's a lot more going on than she's letting on. Man, I'm sorry. What do you need? Can you discreetly find out if she's seeing someone? And maybe look into where the money she's been transferring regularly is going. Marcus was silent for a moment. Robert, are you sure you want to know? Sometimes it's better to let it go and move on. Marcus, she asked for a divorce while I was on the operating table. After 18 years together. I need to know the truth. Okay, give me a few days. While I waited, I started my own home investigation. I reviewed the phone bills, the times Linda left the house, the places she said she was going. The pattern was clear. Thursday afternoons she would leave for painting class and not return until evening. Saturdays she would go shopping with her friends and disappear for hours. Sundays she would visit her mother, but when I called my mother-in-law once, she said she hadn't seen Linda in weeks. Marcus's call came sooner than I expected. Robert, sit down. You're not going to like what I found out. Go ahead. Your wife has been having an affair for 8 months with a guy named David Mitchell. He's a personal trainer, 34 years old. They met at the gym she started going to last year. I felt like someone had ripped the stitches out of my surgery. What about the money? She's paying rent on an apartment for him in River North, $2,500 a month. She's basically paying for the guy's lifestyle. With MY money. Exactly. And Robert, there's more. She started a shell company 3 months ago and transferred $40,000 from your savings account to it. It looks like she's been planning this getaway for a while. I hung up the phone and stared at the ceiling of our living room. Linda hadn't just betrayed me, she had systematically robbed me while planning to abandon me at the most vulnerable moment of my life. But as the anger grew in my chest, a smile began to form on my face. Linda had completely underestimated the man she was married to. She thought I was just a middle-aged salesman who was lucky in business. She didn't know that 25 years of selling to pharmaceutical companies had taught me to always have a plan B. And especially, she didn't know about the conversation I had with my lawyer 3 days before the surgery. Mr. Davidson, Thomas Wright, my lawyer of 10 years, had said, given the risk of the surgery, it would be prudent to update your will and estate protection documents. At the time, I thought I was protecting myself against death. I didn't know I was protecting myself from something much worse, the discovery that my wife was a greedy stranger who was just waiting for the right moment to destroy me. I picked up the phone and dialed Thomas. Tom, it's Robert. It's time to implement that plan we discussed. Linda just found out that she completely underestimated who she married. Revenge would be served colder than the corridors of the ICU where she abandoned me. 2 days after the revelation about David Mitchell, Linda showed up at the house for the first time since she had me committed. I was in the kitchen eating breakfast and trying to process my new reality when I heard the key in the lock. Robert? Are you there? Her voice echoed through the hallway. In the kitchen, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I had decided not to confront her right away. I wanted to see how far she would take the charade. Linda walked into the kitchen wearing gym clothes, a cruel irony considering where she had met her lover. She looked younger, more vibrant, as if getting rid of me had removed years from her face. How are you feeling? Are you taking your medication? The fake concern in her voice made me nauseous. I'm fine. Following doctor's orders. Good. She opened the refrigerator and grabbed a bottle of water, avoiding my gaze. Robert, we need to talk about practical matters. The house, the bills, the division of assets. Sure. Have a seat. Linda sat down across the kitchen table where we had eaten breakfast together for 18 years. It was surreal how she could appear so calm discussing the end of our marriage. My lawyer said that considering you're recovering from serious surgery, we can make this as simple as possible. You get the house, I get half of the savings and investments. Clean and quick. I almost laughed at her audacity. How generous. Robert, there's no need to be sarcastic. I'm trying to be fair. Fair. I repeated the word as if it were an alien concept. Linda, can I ask you a question? Of course. How long have you been planning this? She blinked rapidly, a sign I had learned to recognize over the years as an indication that she was about to lie. Robert, I already explained. The surgery made me realize. Linda. My voice grew firmer. How long have you been planning this? She sighed dramatically, as if I were a stubborn child. A few weeks, maybe. Why does it matter? And David? Her face went white. For a moment, the mask of concerned wife slipped completely, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. Who's David? She tried, but her voice trembled. David Mitchell. Personal trainer. 34 years old. Apartment in River North that you've been paying for with our money for 8 months. Linda rose from her chair so quickly that she knocked over the water bottle. Robert, I can explain. Can you? Then explain how you've been supporting your lover's lifestyle with $2,500 a month of the money I earn. Explain how you transferred $40,000 to a shell company. Explain how you had the nerve to file for divorce while I was on the operating table after you stole from me for months. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I knew Linda too well to know that they were tears of anger at being caught, not remorse. Robert, you're never home. You live for your work. I was alone, unhappy. So you decided to steal my money to pay for a personal trainer? It wasn't stealing. It's our money. Ours. I stood up from the chair, feeling the pain in my chest but ignoring it. Linda, I've been working 50 hours a week for 25 years. I build our financial life. I pay for this house. I pay for your groceries. I pay for everything while you stay home painting watercolors and having sex with a guy who's old enough to be our son. That's not how it is. That's exactly how it is. I grabbed the bank statements I had printed out and threw them on the table. It's all here, Linda. Every transfer, every lie, every Thursday you said you were at painting class, but were actually at the apartment you rented for your lover. Linda looked at the papers and then at me. For the first time since I'd known her, I saw something I'd never seen on her face, real fear. Robert, please, we can work this out like adults. Adults? I laughed bitterly. Adults don't steal from their husbands who are recovering from heart surgery. Adults don't file for divorce in the ICU. What are you going to do? She asked, and I finally heard her true personality in her voice, not the loving wife I had known, but someone calculating, trying to assess the damage. I smiled for the first time in the conversation. Linda, you made 2 serious mistakes. First, you thought I was too stupid to figure out your scheme. Second, you thought I was too naive to protect myself against people like you. What are you talking about? 3 days before the surgery, when the doctors warned me about the risks, I updated my will and my legal documents. You know, just in case I died on the table. I saw the confusion on her face. So what? You didn't die. No, Linda. But you revealed exactly who you really are. And it turns out, my lawyer is very, very good at what he does. Linda was clearly lost, trying to understand where I was going with this. Tomorrow you're going to find out that you completely underestimated the man you married. And Linda, I walked toward the kitchen door. You should have stayed with me in the ICU. It could have been your last chance to get some mercy from me. I left the kitchen, leaving Linda alone with the bank statements and a growing realization that the rules of the game had completely changed. The next morning, at 9 a.m. sharp, Thomas Wright arrived at my home in Lincoln Park carrying a leather briefcase and the satisfied smile of a lawyer who was about to execute a perfect plan. Robert, how are you feeling? Physically, better every day. Emotionally, anxious to see Linda's face when she finds out what's in store for her. Thomas sat down in the living room and opened the briefcase. Before we begin, are you sure you want to go through with this? Once we hand over these documents, there's no turning back. Thomas, she stole from me for months, cheated on me for almost a year, and abandoned me in the ICU to file for divorce. I'm absolutely sure. Perfect. Then let's review what we did 3 days before your surgery. He took several documents out of the folder. First, you created an irrevocable trust transferring 80% of your assets to it. The house, the investment accounts, even your share of the company pension fund. All protected from marital division. And she can't contest that? The trust was created while you were still married and you were in full possession of your mental faculties. More importantly, it was created before she filed for divorce. Perfectly legal. Thomas pulled out another document. Second, you amended your will with a very specific clause. Any beneficiary who files for divorce or separation within 90 days of the document's creation automatically forfeits all inheritance rights and benefits. And the timing? Linda filed for divorce exactly 72 hours after you created the new will. She automatically disqualified herself from any claim to your assets. I felt a deep satisfaction growing in my chest. What about the shell company she created? Ah, that's the best part. Thomas smiled. Since you are legally the owner of 50% of everything acquired during the marriage, including companies opened in her name, you now have legal claim to half of that company. And since the money used to create the company came from your joint account without your consent, this constitutes misappropriation of marital funds. Translation? Translation. Linda not only lost her right to her assets, but now owes you $20,000 for half of her company, plus interest and penalties. At that moment, I heard a key in the lock. Linda was back. Showtime, I muttered. Linda entered the room and stopped abruptly when she saw Thomas. Oh. Hi, Thomas. I didn't know you'd be here. Hello. Linda. Actually, I came specifically to speak with you. With me. She looked nervously between us. Please, have a seat, Thomas said, motioning to the armchair across from the sofa. I have some documents to give you. Linda sat down slowly, clearly sensing that something was wrong. Thomas handed her a sealed envelope. This is a legal notice informing you that, due to your divorce petition filed on March 15th, exactly 3 days after your husband created a new will and asset protection trust, you have been automatically disqualified from any claim to his assets. Linda opened the envelope with trembling hands and began to read. I watched her face go from confusion to shock, then to sheer panic. This can't be legal. It's completely legal, Thomas said calmly. Your husband had the foresight to protect his assets before his surgery in case something happened to him. The fact that you filed for divorce within the period specified in the will automatically activated the protective clauses. But I didn't know about these clauses. The law doesn't require you to have known about them. It only requires that they have been legally created, which they have. Linda turned to me, and for the first time I saw real despair in her eyes. Robert, you can't do this to me. We've been married for 18 years. Linda, you abandoned me in the ICU to file for divorce after stealing from me for months. You made your choice. Thomas pulled out another document. Furthermore, Linda, there is the matter of the company you created using marital funds without consent. This second envelope contains a notice that your husband is exercising his legal right to 50% of that company. Linda took the second envelope, and it was like watching someone realize they had dug their own grave. You want half my company? Actually, I said, speaking for the first time since she arrived, we want you to pay us $20,000 for our half, since the company was created with money stolen from our joint accounts. I don't have $20,000. Well, Thomas said, you can use the money left in your savings account, or you can sell your half of the company to your husband, or you can take out a loan. Your choice. Linda looked at the documents, then at me, then back at the documents. Robert, for God's sake, I'm your wife. No, Linda, you're someone who thought you could use me as your personal ATM while you were sleeping with another guy. The difference is that now I know exactly who you are. And David? Thomas asked casually. The apartment you're renting for him? How are you going to keep paying $2,500 a month without access to your husband's funds? Linda's face turned gray. You know about David. Linda, I said, standing up and walking over to the window, I know about everything. The only thing I don't know is how you thought you could fool me forever. You have 30 days to respond to these documents, Thomas said, closing his briefcase. After that, we're going to court, and I can guarantee you it will be much more expensive and much more public. After Thomas left, Linda sat in the room holding the documents as if they were poisonous snakes. Robert, she said finally, can we talk about this? Of course, Linda. Let's talk. But first, answer me this. If I had died on the operating table, would you have canceled the divorce and pretended to be the devastated widow to inherit everything? Her silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, I said, feeling one last twinge of pain not for my physical heart, but for what was left of the 18 years I thought I had shared with someone who loved me. The war had begun, and Linda was about to discover that she had chosen to fight someone who always thought several steps ahead. 3 weeks after handing over the legal documents to Linda, I got a call from my brother Marcus that made me smile for the first time since my surgery. Robert, you need to hear this. Linda tried to take out a $20,000 loan using the house as collateral. And the bank denied it because they found out she no longer has any rights to the property. Apparently, she had a complete breakdown at the bank. Security had to be called. And David? Oh, that's the best part. When Linda couldn't pay his rent this month, David found out that the rich heiress he was dating was actually just a penniless divorced housewife. He blocked her on everything and is already dating another client from the gym. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction upon hearing this. The perfect life Linda had built with my money was falling apart exactly as she deserved. There's more, Marcus continued. She tried to sell the shell company, but found out that no one wants to buy 50% of a company that produces nothing and owes money to the founder's ex-husband. That afternoon, Linda showed up at my door. For the first time in months, she looked her age. Her hair was messy, she had been wearing the same clothes for days, and she had dark circles under her eyes. Robert, please. We need to talk. Sure. Come in. She sat down in the same chair where Thomas had handed me the documents, but now she looked small and defeated. Robert, I've made terrible mistakes. I know that now. Mistakes. I laughed dryly. Linda, you didn't make mistakes. You made choices. For months. Calculated choices to betray me and steal from me. I was confused, unhappy. Linda, stop. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was impulsive. You planned every step, meeting David, setting up the shell company, transferring the money, even the timing of the divorce. The only thing you didn't plan was that I might be smarter than you. Tears began to stream down her face. What do you want me to do? I've lost everything. David dumped me when he found out I had no money. I have nowhere to live. I have no job. Linda, this is exactly what happens when you burn all your bridges in life to chase a fantasy. Robert, please. I admit I've done terrible things. But we've been married for 18 years. That has to count for something. I looked at my wife, my ex-wife, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw who she really was beneath the mask. She wasn't the romantic woman I'd met when I was a young salesman. She wasn't the partner I thought I'd build a life with. She was someone capable of abandoning her husband in the ICU so she could steal from him more easily. You know what hurts me the most, Linda? It's not the money, it's not even David. It's finding out that the woman I loved for 18 years never existed. You just played that role while I was useful. That's not true. Then explain to me how you could look me in the eye for 8 months knowing you were cheating on me and stealing from me. Explain to me how you could file for divorce while I was fighting for my life and surgery. Linda couldn't respond. I'll make you one last offer, he finally said. You sign the divorce papers without contesting anything. Hand over the $20,000 you owe the company, and I won't press criminal charges for misappropriation of funds. I don't have $20,000. Then you get it. Sell your car, borrow from your family, get a job. It's not my problem. Linda was silent for several minutes. What if I can't? Then you'll find out what the American prison system is like for financial crimes. She stood up slowly, like a woman much older than her 48 years. Robert, I really loved you. No, Linda. You loved the lifestyle I provided. There's a difference. After she left, I sat in the living room and reflected on the last 2 months. The heart surgery had given me a second chance at life, but finding out who Linda really was had given me something even more valuable, the chance to start over knowing exactly what kind of person I want by my side. 6 months later, Linda signed all the divorce papers and managed to scrape together $20,000 by selling her car and borrowing money from family. She moved into a small apartment across town and got a job as a receptionist at a veterinary clinic. David? I found out from Marcus that he was arrested 3 months later for pulling the same scam on another married woman. Apparently, Linda wasn't the first or the last to support him. As for me, I retired early at age 51 with my financial health intact and a perfectly functioning heart. I moved to a smaller house in the suburbs and started traveling, something I never did during my 25 years of focusing solely on work. Ironically, the heart attack and Linda's betrayal were the best things that ever happened to me. They forced me to completely reevaluate my life and rid me of someone who had been draining me financially and emotionally for years without me realizing it. Sometimes when I drive through Lincoln Park, I see the house where I lived for 10 years and think about how strange it is that the worst day of my life, waking up in the ICU to find out my wife had left me, turned out to be the first day of the best phase of my life. Linda thought she had chosen the perfect moment to destroy me when I was at my most vulnerable. She didn't know she had chosen the perfect moment for me to discover that I was much stronger and much smarter than she ever imagined. Revenge was served. Justice was served. And for the first time in decades, I was truly free.